Hello and welcome to the Getting Started with Your Sewing Machine tutorial. We're going to be threading two sewing machines tonight. This is my one. She's a heavy duty machine. I use her for absolutely everything because I love her. She'll go through pretty much anything I throw at her. And my son was lucky enough that Santa gave him a sewing machine for Christmas. This is the one from Aldi, so I know it's quite popular with beginner sewers. It has a different bobbin set up to mine, so we'll be looking at that one as well. I'll also quickly go through how to change needles, how to change your feet, and what some of these dials on the front mean. My son's doesn't have dials, it has a digital interface. It's not plugged in though, because I don't want to sew through my fingers while we're doing this tutorial. And I do have a past record of sewing my fingers, so we're not going to do that. So, let's get cracking. Let's start with my Singer. Now, normally, you would have a little spool here, a spool holder, which is where your spool of thread sits. But I dropped my machine, so I no longer have a spool holder. So I really need to get it fixed. So to start with, you've got your spool holder. It should be here, but I'm going to use this one. This one you would normally use when you want an additional spool for your twin needle. And we're just going to follow the instructions on the machine, because most of them have a little diagram on. So put it on your primary spool holder. And then you're going to take this thread and just pop it underneath this first guide. This seems very convoluted, but it helps set the tension in the thread so you can stitch properly. Now we're going to follow it down here. You see we're now at number 4. So we're going to go up, around there, go all the way back to the top. Now if you see here, this moves when I move my wheel on the side of the machine. So you want it at its highest position, and then you can just loop the thread around it and go back down the other side. Now, this is where it gets a bit finicky. So you get your thread and you have to put it behind this metal bit. One side of it will be open, one side of it will be closed. I have a feeling my son's is around the other way, so it's just best to check which way around it goes. And then you'll have a tiny little hook above your needle. It doesn't look like there's anything there, but you need to thread it behind that hook. Now I have a needle threader on mine, so if you don't have one, at this point you would just make sure the end of your thread isn't fluffy. Either trim it, lick it, make sure your needle is in the middle, and then you can thread your needle by just poking it from front to back. Luckily I have a needle threader, so on mine you can just pull this down, the little hook comes through the eye. Sorry, it's not very big and I'm all hands. So we just put that under the first guide there, and then drag it up the needle behind the second ones. And when we let go, it will pull that thread through to create a loop for us, which we can then pull out, pop through our foot and push it to the back left. And then you're ready to start sewing from your needle's point of view. Secondly, you need to put your bobbin in. This little latch here will open the bobbin cover. You'll have a similar one somewhere on your machine. It's always next to the bobbin cover though. Take that out, put that to one side and don't lose it. And then this is your bobbin. So when you pull this thread, the bobbin will turn either anti-clockwise, or if you're holding it around the other way, clockwise. Now, on all machines, there'll be a little diagram that says your bobbin must run anti-clockwise and then be threaded. At least that's what mine says. So I need to make sure that my bobbin, when I pull this thread, will run anti-clockwise. If you don't, you'll just jam your machine. So that goes in the main bobbin hole, and then mine goes underneath this metal hook, which is very small. I don't know if you can see where that's now slotted underneath. Okay. And then that's out the way. And then it goes up there. Put your cover back on. And then just hold your needle thread. Do one stitch, and then you'll be able to pull your needle thread and that will bring your bobbin thread up. Some machines you don't need to do this final step of pulling the bobbin thread up, it'll pull it up automatically. But on this one, that's what I need to do. So, now you've got your machine threaded, you might think, I've got the wrong foot on my machine. What am I going to do? So, at the back of your thing here, you'll have a little lever. When you push this, it lets go of your foot, and you can just take it off. So this is the connecting bar for the feet. They're all pretty similar, to be honest. So I find the easiest way to do it is just line it up underneath the shaft there, and then just keep trying to put it down and just do it until, there you go, it's clicked. We can lift it back up and our foot is firmly and properly attached to our machine. So that's your foot. Next up is the needle. So most machines come with a little accessory box. If yours didn't, and I did this when I first started sewing, the front of your machine should, in some way, open up. And quite often the manufacturers leave a little pack of accessories inside this pocket. Mine, you can also take this whole thing off, so you might be able to do that on yours. And that little accessory pack will have things like a buttonhole foot, some spare needles, some spare bobbins, a little screwdriver. So mine, I've actually moved to this case because it's got all the bits and bobs of all my machines. Put in the screwdriver. So unthread your needle, and then this is important, hold your needle with one hand and then unscrew this tiny screw here. Oh, done mine up too tight. There we go. Now the reason we hold on to it is if you're not holding this and you undo it, it drops down and goes straight inside your machine, and it's an absolute pain to get out again. So I'm not actually going to change my needle because I've got the needle in that I would normally be using. But the shaft on the needle will have a rounded profile, except for the back edge. The back edge is always completely flat. I don't know if you can see that, but this back edge is flat, and this front edge is rounded. So you want to hold your needle with the eye pointing forwards. You don't want to be able to see it straight on. You want to be able to see through that eye. And you want the flat bit of the shaft at the back. You won't be able to get it in your needle holder unless you do it like that. So I find the easiest way is to just drop it down a little bit and push it up to that hole. Now, you might think, okay, my needle's in. But because I've still got some wiggle room and I can move my needle up and down, I need to make sure it goes all the way to the top. If you don't do this, it can cause issues later on when the needle hits the bottom of the inside of the machine or the bobbin, and it causes a right mess. Now, I wouldn't normally do it like this, but for demonstration purposes, hold your needle where it is, and then just screw that up, tight enough to hold the needle in, and you've changed your needle. So it's not a complicated process, you just need to make sure you don't drop your needle. Thread it as normal and you'll be good to go. So while we're over here, we'll quickly just go over some of the dials. I have quite a few on my machine. So I have a width setting here. This is for when you're doing a zigzag stitch. It makes it wider or narrower. You can also use it for doing a straight stitch when you just want to offset your needle ever so slightly to the left. So if I want to do a top stitch, but I want my top stitch to be slightly further from my seam, I'll often set my needle to the centre, and then I'll just change the width ever so slightly to get my needle to offset. And then I know I'm going to have a nice even top stitch without having to mess with that. So you can see the needle moving back and forth as I change the width. And that's just on my straight stitch setting. Next up we have a needle position. So if I want my needle to go right across to the left hand side, I just spin the dial, it moves to the left. Spin it back again, it will go to the centre, spin it again, and it will go across to the right there. So pretty straightforward switch. And then we have a tension setting here. I don't use this often, to be honest, because it's on the standard setting that I need. So unless you're having an issue with tension of stitches, I'd leave that alone. But again, you can tighten it, you can loosen it, Mine's just on the standard setting that it came with. And I also have another tension setting up here. Okay, so I have a length here. This is how long I want each stitch to be. So obviously, if I set it to 0, it's not going to do a lot. Set it to 4 and you've got quite a long stitch. And then you'll see I have S1 and S2. These correspond to the blue and red versions of my stitches, which are special stitches. So if I want to use one of them, I have to turn my dial until I get to S1, and then I can choose which of the blue stitches I'd like my machine to sew. Same for S2, spin it round, and then change this main dial. So that's it really for my machine. She's a lovely machine. And then this is my son's machine. So this isn't as powerful as my machine, mainly because he also has fingers and he's a small child, so we don't want him sewing his fingers. But it does thread very similarly. It's got orange thread in because that's his favourite colour and it's the only colour he'll sew with. So he goes through a lot of this now. So he has not broken his spool holder. So we'll put that on our spool holder. And again, you want to go across here and you want to find the first small metal hook and just push it under. You should hear it go through. Ignore this bit if you've got this machine. That's to hold the reference card for the stitches. And then we're going to go across the back here and under the first guide. Again, we're going to go down the right hand side, under the bottom, up the left, through the top hook, and all the way back down again. So as you can see, completely different machine, threads almost identically. I think his goes this way. Well, oh no, his doesn't. His goes from the same side as mine. Maybe it's the needle that goes the opposite way on his. So yeah, his has got the needle hook on this side. So we're just gonna push it behind this needle holder. Sorry, it's quite hard to do from this side. There we go. Behind there. Now, I didn't know this about this Aldo machine, but it does actually have a needle threader on because we found it, although I didn't see any mention of it in the instructions. If you push this little white bit here, a needle threader pops out, which again, you put the thread under the hook on the left. Let me just do that and then I'll move my hand out of the way. So you can see it's hooked under that left one over there. And then you just push it in towards the needle. This one is slightly trickier to use and I don't always get it to work, to be honest. I probably have to adjust this needle position slightly so the hook can go all the way through. And try again. Get on. Nope. Okay. So I'm going to do the traditional method, so suck the end of the thread, which stops it from going wayward. Squint a little bit and do your very best to poke that thread through the little hole on the front of the needle. It eventually should go through. God, I haven't manually threaded one for ages. I rely on my threader, getting lazy these days. See if we can do this. If not, we'll just pretend I've done it. And I'll just, there we go. There you go, so that's 3. There we go. So that's the needle threaded. You can see he's also got a bobbin holder with the little hatch here. So you have to lift his bobbin cover up, it doesn't spring up like mine. And this is your bobbin. So again, there's always a reference with the instructions on the top of your bobbin cover. So as long as you're holding it the way that it would be put back on, which I have a feeling is this way up for this machine. Yep, because you've got the cut off edge at the top there. So again, it has to run anti-clockwise, and then his has to go through a separate guide system for the bobbin. So I'm going to pop his bobbin in, put it underneath the first one. So it has to go down this slot here. Then we're going to go up to the top, round this tiny little hook here, which is a pain. Then you go round to the bottom and through this one. Now this confused me for a long time, but if you pull it, the thread will snap because there's a cutter inside this machine that cuts your bobbin thread off. And then just pop the bobbin cover back on. Again, hold this, and you can use it to pull your bobbin thread up and through, if I can catch it. And there it is. There you go, so that's our bobbin. So again, that's all threaded. His also has this little accessory box on the front. He actually keeps his accessories in here. So let's grab his. Now this is what the package looked like when you get it from the manufacturer. You can see I've got all sorts of little bits in here. I've got some bobbins, I've got an unpicker, I've got some spare needles, I've got a twin needle at the front there, I've got some sewing machine lubricant, and then I have an oddly shaped flat piece of metal. If you got it in there it is. Now this is in lieu of a screwdriver for this machine. You don't get a screwdriver with it, you get this little L-shaped piece of metal. This flat edge here is what you'll use to undo your bobbin, your needle. So again, hold your needle, and then always remember lefty loosey, righty tighty. So if you're looking at it from this side, as I am, lefty loosey's that way. I find his slightly harder to do because it's digital. The needle moves around when you're trying to put pressure on it here, but it does come out. Oh, I forgot to unthread it. Just unthread that. Ooh, that's a bit of a long thread. And again, his uses, because it's a standard sewing machine, the same type of needles. A flat bit on the back of the shaft, rounded at the front. So we're just going to pop that straight back in. Put in there. Jiggle it around until you find the hole. You can see that I'm so used to doing my machine. It takes me a bit longer on his. Make sure it's nice and firmly pushed up so that it doesn't jam in a minute. And screw it back on. There we go. Now if you do have this machine, you'll probably have used all of these buttons, but I'll just quickly go through them because you might be waiting to use your machine. So this one is the twin needle activation. The twin needle will then only allow certain stitches to be used, and it will disable any that cannot be used with the twin needle. And all you do is get your second spool of thread, pop it on here, thread it in exactly the same way, and put it through the right hand needle of your twin needle. He can then switch between stitches and lettering. And then he has an electronic button to make his needle go in and out, so that will take it from its highest to its lowest and vice versa. And then this he can change his stitches and whatnot on here. And then his has this reverse button, so I have to push and hold a lever on mine, which I will show you, but he can just push this button and it will do 3 lock stitches so that his sewing doesn't come undone. And if you have one like mine, which is lever based, you have to push and hold that down while you're sewing. If you let go, it'll start going forward again. So I just have to push and hold it to switch it to reverse. I think that's everything, to be honest. Yeah, I hope you're all enjoying your new machines if you got one for Christmas. And if you've got any questions or you want to see any demos of any other part of the machine, then please let me know. I'll also be doing a tutorial on how to thread a overlocker. So if you've got an overlocker and you're not sure, let me know and I'll do a tutorial on that. So I hope you'll have a lovely evening, and I'm going to go and relax after doing that. So I'll see you all later. Thank you. Bye.